When you're planning a trip to Mexico, no one wants to think anything bad could happen. You're looking forward to the waterfalls you're going to jump into, the pyramids you're going to climb, and all the delicious tacos you're going to eat. Plan for the best, but prepare for the worst.
It really it can happen to anyone, not to be scary of it's going to happen to you, but the more you can equip yourself with this knowledge, like if you're watching this and you think it doesn't apply to you, I mean, I pray that it never does apply to you. But unfortunately, we're only human, and maybe one day it will, or someone that you know. And knowledge is power.
If you're new to my channel, welcome, and if you've been here before, welcome back. My name is Alex, and I moved to Mexico from the US in 2017. I live in a city called Guadalajara, but I've traveled all over Mexico in the 7 years that I've called it home. I'm actually not in Mexico right now. I'm filming this video while out and about in my hometown in Michigan. And when I'm back here in Michigan, my conversations with friends, with family, with those random people that I run into at the grocery store, their questions, their concerns remind me just how understandably overwhelming traveling in a country that you've never been to before, getting by in a language that you don't really speak, can be. Which is why in today's video, I'll be sharing my personal experiences with illness and injury in Mexico, plus the stories and advice of some of my friends who have dealt with similar issues, so you know what to do if you find yourself in one of these situations. Even if you do absolutely everything right, follow all the tips, use hand sanitizer, go to high traffic food vendors, avoid drinking the tap water, even if you do everything right, food poisoning is one of the most common issues that travelers deal with in Mexico.
And so when we started to leave Mexico City, just noticed he like didn't have an appetite, just like wasn't feeling really great. And then it really was like our first day in San Miguel that he was just like having to go to the bathroom all the time. And it was just like, I was like, this just doesn't seem right. This doesn't really seem normal. I basically told him, I was like, I think we should go to the hospital. And my husband, I mean, he's young, he's healthy, he's like never like the sick one. So it really was like, it felt like, oh, maybe we shouldn't go. Like, this seems kind of silly. But something in my gut was just saying, like, I think this is serious, and we didn't want it to get more serious. So
I have had food poisoning. I have lost count of how many times I've had food poisoning since moving to Mexico. But to be fair, I have also had food poisoning in the US. It can happen anywhere. My friend Natasha, who runs her own online business, she's a creator and a coach, was in Mexico earlier this year. She was in San Miguel de Allende for a speaking engagement when she got food poisoning.
probably the doctor was like the only one that spoke enough English to speak to us. So that was definitely the first time that it was really challenging. And even when she was explaining stuff to us, I mean, with medical things, it's like you can know even a little bit of Spanish, but once you start adding in like all the medical terms and stuff, it's like it's hard to kind of find that translation sometimes. We got such great care. And yeah, she like automatically right away did some blood work, did some things, and was able to tell that he did have a bacteria infection. So we stayed at the hospital for maybe like 4 hours with him just getting like an IV treatment, antibiotics, which definitely helped him a lot.
When Natasha and her husband got back to the hotel that night, they thought that the worst of it was over. They thought that they were out of the woods. But then Natasha got sick herself. Food poisoning, I've read online that it can incubate for up to 2 weeks. So it's really, really hard to know what exactly it was that got you sick in the first place.
And for him, it was really just like going to the bathroom. I don't know how graphic we want to get, but just like very fluid, very uncomfortable. Even our stomach sounded not right. Like just the gurgles and burgles were like really intense. But for me, I also was vomiting. So that was very unfortunate because I was having it both at the same time. So if anything, I probably got it like a little bit worse, even though I got it maybe 2 days after him. I'm glad we went when we did because I think it could have been very easy to see like let's let it run its course and just think it was like the stomach being upset, but I'm really glad we went because I think it allowed us to like take it a lot more seriously when it did happen. I think going to a hospital in like a foreign country is like really intimidating for a lot of reasons, but I think really taking it seriously, I think was what I think I'm like most grateful that we did.
Listening to Natasha's story reminded me so much of a bout of food poisoning that I had back in 2021 when I was traveling solo in Chiapas. I couldn't keep anything down and I was so severely dehydrated, but I still thought that I could just ride it out. In hindsight, I really should have gone to the hospital because when you're traveling solo, you just shouldn't take any chances and a situation can go from bad to worse really fast. I collabed with Safety Wing for this video and I highly recommend their travel medical insurance because one, you can go to the clinic of your choosing, which is super convenient when you're not feeling well. And two, the $0 deductible means that you're covered for even the smallest claims.
If I could do anything different, it probably would be nice to have travel insurance, especially on like a longer trip like that, just in case that type of situation came up.
I also really like Safety Wing because it covers lost luggage, travel delay, and trip interruption. Because we all know that food poisoning isn't the only annoying thing that can happen while traveling. I am almost down to the water, down to the beach. Lake Michigan looks absolutely gorgeous. Can't wait to show you. But first, you need to know that Safety Wing recently revamped their nomad insurance. They asked real nomads what they wanted to see, what they needed to see, and ended up updating the claims process. So now it has a faster turnaround time and is even more user-friendly. You can check out the link in the description below to learn more about Safety Wing and make sure you're covered for your next trip to Mexico. As you may or may not know, I took up roller skating earlier this year, and since then I've had a lot of cuts, a lot of scrapes, a lot of little bumps and bruises, and a couple of those cuts, even though I thought I was taking really good care of them, ended up getting infected. If you weren't born in Mexico, if you didn't grow up there, you, and by you I mean your body, might not be used to or have an immunity to the different bacterias there. So a little cut, a little scrape can end up being pretty serious. I'm gonna put a few recommendations for products up on the screen that you can buy at a Mexican pharmacy, just in case you don't speak a whole lot of Spanish and aren't quite sure what you're looking for. If your cut does get infected, like one of mine did earlier this year, you can call a médico a domicilio. So you can have a home visit. In Mexico, it's really affordable to have a doctor actually come to your house. One came to mine on his motorcycle, and checked out my leg and wrote me a prescription for some antibiotics. I think the whole visit costs something between $40 and $50 US, or if you don't want to spend that much money, you could go to a pharmacy that has a sign that says consultorio médico, and that means that they have a doctor on site who will see you and can give you a diagnosis, a prescription if necessary. It is so freaking gorgeous outside. I really regret not bringing a swimsuit down here. I'm wearing pants. Like, what is wrong with me? I've spent way too much time in Mexico that I see temperatures in the 70s and think it's cold outside. But there will be other vlogs for jumping in the lake and being at the beach. Last summer, my friend Jenny, who is a travel writer based in Mexico City, was visiting Isla Mujeres when she had the most freak accident.
I was singing karaoke with some of my friends and on this platform stage, and it's worth noting we had only had one round of beer, so we were very much not under the influence. But we finished our song and were stepping off, and there was the platform stage, and then there was like a log step like screwed into the side of the stage that you would step on the log to get on and off the platform. The log became unattached and kind of like rolled forward as I stepped onto it, and I just immediately like fell onto the ground. I couldn't walk at all. Both my ankles were totally messed up. And I was supposed to go back to the mainland the next day. Ended up extending my stay on the island a couple of days just to like figure out what was going on. But then finally it's like I had to get home. And so then it was figuring out how to not only get back to the mainland, but get back to Mexico City where I live.
This freak accident resulted in Jenny breaking one ankle and severely spraining the other. When I first heard Jenny's story, I thought, wow, the restaurant is totally responsible for what happened to her. And maybe that's my American brain showing, who can I sue? But it got me thinking about fault and liability in Mexico.
The general consensus was that it was not a case worth pursuing. And here's why. Civil cases, so this would have been considered a civil lawsuit. Civil cases in Mexico don't have any standing. So even though I had photo and video proof of like putting me in the restaurant at that moment, shots of the employees wrapping my ankles, like they clearly knew what was going on. And I had multiple, because I was there with friends, I had multiple eyewitnesses, not only Americans, but there were 2 Mexican girls I was traveling with. So even I had Mexican citizens that were eyewitnesses ready. They still told me that I didn't really have a case because civil lawsuits just don't go anywhere in Mexico. It's a very inefficient system. I found out that here I would have to pay a steep hourly fee to a lawyer, regardless of the outcome of the case. So the lawyer was like, yeah, he's like, I could take your case and charge you, but he's like, realistically, he's like, we wouldn't see movement for years. He's like, maybe up to 5 years. It would just get buried. Nothing, there would be no progress. And then we don't even know what would happen. And I was like, well, I'm like, what should I have done? Like, what do you do in this situation? And what he said was very surprising. It would have never occurred to me. And I think ethically don't really agree with it, but I'm going to share this information. He said, the only way to get movement with something like that here is for it to be a criminal case. So what I should have done, if I can reverse time, is when the accident happened, I should have called the police and filed a police report in the moment. But he said that's just how things work in Mexico. And if I had had a police report, date and time stamped that shows the moment it happened, the location it happened, like I said, the photos and the videos weren't interesting enough. So I needed an official document saying, like, this happened at this restaurant on this day and at this time, then it could have been pursued as a criminal case, and then there could have been very quick traction.
I'm guessing that most travelers, if they break a bone in Mexico, are just going to try to get back to their home country for care. But in case you can't get back to your home country, or you're going to be in Mexico for an extended period of time, I want to share Jenny's experience getting surgery on her ankle in Mexico because, wow, I learned a lot and had some major takeaways.
I ended up contracting one of the top, if not the top, orthopedic surgeons in all of Mexico. And he was, yeah, he's like, you need surgery and we need this to happen ASAP. I think that was like a Tuesday, and I immediately called the surgeon back, and my surgery was scheduled for that Friday. So it happened pretty quick. Almost my entire medical team was bilingual, and so they were able to explain everything to me. People were super compassionate. The room they gave me, I spent just one night there. I stayed overnight, but I got what would be considered like a suite in the US that I would never have been able to afford at a hospital. The facilities were really excellent. The care was really excellent. The very worst moment was immediately coming out of the surgery when I was waking up from the anesthesia. It was both like the anesthesia hadn't worn off fully yet, and so they couldn't give me anything else. But I had just had my body sawed into, like, not to be graphic, but it was pretty gross looking. And I was in so much pain. My body was like shaking. Like I had gone into shock from the pain, and I was shaking and I was crying. Pain medications that are considered narcotics are not legal in Mexico. And, I think that there's a lot of good for that. Coming from the United States, obviously we have a problem with overprescribing pain medication and people developing addiction and not. But then on the other hand, it's like, well, it was developed for a reason. And when people are in very severe pain, having relief from that sounds nice. And so unfortunately, that medication does not exist in this country. I have my surgery, recovery, da da da. And then I go to check out, and I think I was responsible for like, I don't remember how I had to pay like $400 cash or something, which is separate from what I had already paid. So I paid like so they, they bring out the little terminal, like to me in my recovery room. They're like, all right, they were very crass about it. But I'm like, okay, so I paid the little amount that I owed. And then I was like, all right, like, let's let me out of here. Let's be on our way. Because again, everything was like I had gone through, like, it was like almost a couple hours of like intake paperwork, and like everything was already squared away between like the hospital and the insurance company. But then they were like, no, we won't let you leave until we receive the funds from your insurance company. So not all, like them like having like a contract and everything being approved didn't matter. So I had to sit there in a wheelchair. There was a guard at the door of my hospital room, not letting me leave until this payment was processed. I think they kept me there for at least another 90 minutes, if not over 2 hours.
Is there anything that you can think of, that could have been done differently on your end to have avoided that situation?
I think, yeah. So I think so. So I think that if earlier in the morning, I had my partner on my behalf try and get things paid out and processed in advance of it being time to leave, I think that would have given us a good buffer time. But again, it's like this was new information to both of us, so we didn't really know what we were doing. And also, I was not expecting that reaction. Very bizarre. But I would not hesitate to have surgery here again. God forbid something happened. Like I said, I mean, there were moments and elements that were not ideal. Pain medication, not ideal. The shakedown for getting paid at the end, not ideal. But like I said, the process, it was the in between, all the parts that were really important were super high level. I have a really exciting tour coming up. It's the first one I've been able to do in a year because I'm walking again, and it's long overdue. But I'm hosting a really special experience for Dia de Muertos this year here in Mexico City. It's for 5 days from October 30th to November 3rd. Come and see the best of what not only Mexico City has to offer, but honestly what Mexico has to offer for Dia de Muertos. Feel free to ping me with any questions, but it's going to be really, really fun. And I'll be hosting additional trips beyond that as well in the future.
This little town where I grew up on Lake Michigan has gotten so much more popular with tourists in the last, since I lived here like 10 years ago. It's a Monday and the beach is absolutely packed with people. In the future, I plan on doing a video all about private healthcare in Mexico, specifically for those of you who want to move to Mexico, who want to live in Mexico. So if you have questions for that video, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. In the meantime, check out this video next, all about Puerto Vallarta in the off season. Maybe you can squeeze a trip in there before the end of the year. Just don't forget to bring your sunglasses like I did today. I'm Alex from backpackingbrunette.com. Thanks for watching. Vale la pena.